Please use the link below to get the notes, questions and other videos. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share to others for our daily new videos.
Okay, how are you? In the previous lesson, we discussed Skill Development Act. Remember, I said that we are going to discuss 8 acts. So amongst the list of those acts, today we are going to have a lesson with regard to Labor Relations Act. So now, we all know why these acts were established. So I won't waste much time on that one because I've already explained in a previous lesson. So now, Labor Relations Act. So Labor Relations Act is the act that was established so as to promote the procedures on the resolution of the labor disputes at the workplace. So now one may ask, what is this dispute? So now whenever we refer to a dispute, we mean the disagreement between the employer and the employee. So now, recently, if you have seen, there are a lot of indifferences between the employer and the employee. So now this Labor Relations Act somehow gives the guidelines on how the employer should solve any existing problem in their businesses. Okay, so now we are going to check the purpose of this act, and we are also going to check the impact of this act. How is this act affecting businesses in a positive manner, and also how it does affect businesses in a negative manner. So from there, we are also going to check ways that businesses can comply with this act, and also we are going to check how to be the danger if businesses are not able to follow this act. So now, the purpose of this act is to promote simple procedures for the registration of trade unions. When we refer to trade unions, we refer to organizations formed so as to fight for the rights of workers. So trade unions normally focuses only on the rights of workers at different workplaces. So now it gives the insight, guidelines on how these trade unions should be formed and how they should actually operate so as to address their mandate. So now the second one, we are saying that this act has been established so as to do what? So as to taking into account the Commission for Conciliation, Mediation and Arbitration for dispute resolution. Remember, I said dispute normally we refer to what? We refer to a disagreement between the employer and the employee. So now CCMA was established in terms of the LRA 1995 as amended. So now CCMA chip in if there is what? Disputes that are not actually solved at the workplace level. So now moving on, we are saying that this act has been established with the purpose of providing a framework structure for labor relations between the employers and employees. Meaning these guidelines that this act gives, it does portray the guidelines on how employees can relate well with their employers. So now moving on to the next aspect, it classifies the transfer of employment contracts between the existing and new employers. So now remember, if you are working for a certain company, there should be an agreement, written agreement. And that written agreement, we call it what? A contract. So now, if when as a person, you are living from one job to the next, while still having the contract with other business, so now this act will give the insight on how actually you should move from one job to the next, even though you are still having the contract with another business. So now, or previous business. So now moving on to the second, moving on to the next purpose, we are saying that it advances economic development, social justice, labor peace to ensure that the workplace maintains the basic rights of employees. So now remember in a previous lesson, I did explain the meaning of economic development. So now when we refer to economic development, This is nothing but the improvement of standard of living of the inhabitants of a certain country or certain nation. So now here, in order to gauge or measure out the economic development, we check different vectors such as poverty level, such as literacy level, such as uh, fertility level, death rate, and the likes. So now moving on to the next, we are going to discuss what? We're going to discuss the impact of LRA on businesses. So now this impact, actually, we are going to check the positive side of it. The first one, we are saying that this act promotes a healthy relationship between the employer and employees. So meaning, since this act gives the insight or the guidelines on how workers should relate well with their employers, then it promotes a conducive environment for both parties, namely employer and the employee. So it somehow minimizes a lot of conflicts between two parties. So now moving on to the next aspect, we are saying that LRA protects the rights of businesses in labor-related issues. So now, remember, businesses as well, they do have their own rights. Not only us as human beings do possess rights, even businesses in the same manner, they have rights, and their rights also, they shouldn't be violated. As a person also, if you have signed a contract in a particular business, you should follow whatsoever guidelines that do appear in that particular contract. So now, moving on, we are saying that the impact is that labor disputes are settled quicker and are less expensive. Why? Because this act gives simple procedures on how to solve resolution between, how to solve the conflicts between the employer and the employees. So now moving on, workplace forums can add value to businesses if it functions properly. So now forums here, we normally refer to what? We normally refer to committees, the committees inside that particular business. So businesses are actually having committees, and if they're having committees, this will give the employers and the employees a chance to relate well with one another. Why are we saying that? Because in these committees, they will be able also to exercise their own opinions. We are referring to employees. Okay, moving on to the next aspect, it protects employers who embark on lawful lockouts when negotiations between parties do fail. So now, remember, sometimes you may find that there is a misunderstanding between the employer and the employee. So now, if the strikes or still continues or prolong, then the employer has a right to lock out those people who have embarked in a strike, or those people who have actually engaged in a strike, if the strike maybe take long. So now, moving on to another aspect, we are saying that LRA provides for the principles of collective bargaining and puts structures in place with which disputes in the workplace can be settled. So now, collective disputes, here we normally refer to negotiations between employers association and trade unions on matters such as conditions of employment, wages, and the likes. So now, moving on to another aspect, we are saying that this LRA provides specific guidelines for employers on correct and fair disciplinary procedures. If there is any misunderstanding between the employer and the employee at the workplace, so now this act does give what? It does give the guidelines on how to solve such dispute prevailing in the workplace. So now, remember, disciplinary procedures, there should be a written code of conduct that should be followed whenever we solve the issues taking place at the business level. So now for sure, on this one, grade 12s, you know that disciplinary procedures, they are in line with ethics as well as professionalism. So now when we talk of ethics, we talk of a set of rules that have been set by the businesses so as to do what? So as to work as a guide to employees and the employers. So now professionalism is actually being able to follow such set rules. Okay, moving on to another aspect, we are saying that employers and employees have guidelines regarding correct and fair dismissal procedures. So now you can't just fire someone. If someone crosses the boundaries as a CEO, you can't just give the command to HR and say, hey, HR, just fire this person because this person has actually crossed the boundaries. There are procedures that should be followed. And this LRA, that's what does give such guidelines on how to fire someone. Can't just fire. There should be warnings, and there should also be a number of warnings given to that particular employee before they actually been dismissed. Okay, so now moving on to another aspect, we are saying that it provides mechanisms such as statutory councils, collective bargaining, or CCMA. So remember, I said that collective bargaining here we refer to negotiations between employers association and trade unions on matters such as conditions of employment, wages and salaries, and the likes. So now this act, it does give the guidelines on how to deal with issues of salaries, how to deal with issues of wages and other conditions that are not favorable at a different workplace. So now moving on to another aspect, we are saying that employers are entitled to compensation from the labor corps if they suffered damages as a result of unprotected strikes. So remember, sometimes when strikes are taking place, you find that the management of that particular company get what? Get affected or get injured, and also the property in the same manner got damaged. So now this act also gives what? It gives the inside guidelines on how the business can take measures when strikes resulted in the damage of the property, also when people have actually injured. Okay, so now moving on, we are going to check now the negative side of this act. I'm going to check the negative side of this act. Remember, each and every aspect has pros and cons. So now the negative side of it is that reduced global competitiveness due to lower productivity. Lower productivity, why lower productivity we refer to what? Low production of goods and services. So now global, remember, we refer to what? We refer to international relationship. So competitiveness here, we check whether this business will be able to promote its brand internationally. Will its brand be recognized in other countries? So now this LRA somehow reduce what? Reduce the chances of the brand being known by other countries. Why are we saying that? We are saying that because sometimes you may find that there is what? You may find that there's a prevailing indifferences between the employer and the employee, and then such matters end up giving a chance of some of the employees to leave that particular job. And if they leave that particular job, it means that now the number of people who are working in that particular business has decreased. And if the number has decreased, that will result in low production of goods and services. because you may find the people who left that particular business, they left with their own skills. And now to replace someone with the very same knowledge, it's not easy, because as we know, as people, we are unique. Even if we do possess our same skill, but the approach towards the production of goods and services is somehow different. Okay, so moving on to another aspect, we are saying that productivity may decrease if employees are allowed to participate in the activities of trade unions during work time. Yes, work time, nothing should be done but working. People should only um, have a break when it's lunchtime, and maybe tea time, because in other businesses there are lunch times and tea times. So now working hours, if you still remember in a previous lesson under Skill Development Act, I did mention that according to basic conditions of Employment Act, the provisions of that act says that working hours should be 8 hours per day. And if, say, there is overtime, it shouldn't elapse 1 hour, meaning it should at least, if overtime is included, be 9 hours per day. So now, if trade unions now they are exercising their roles during working hours, that one on its own is going to stop, or is going to reduce the level of production of goods and services. Because remember, as an employer, you are expecting your employees to produce goods and services as expected and timely, without any waste of resources. Okay, moving on, we are saying that this cost of labor increases because of legal strikes. The cost may increase in a way that some strikes, remember, we said that can result in damage of the furniture, in damage of the property, and also you may find that some of the people or some of the management get injured, and the moment they get injured, now they should be taken to the hospitals, and now bills should be paid there regarding healthcare. So now also, if property get damaged, it means that now it should be replaced. And now if it's going to be replaced, it means that now the business is going to pump out money for that. And once the business pumps out money for that, in the long run, now it will even hinder it from expanding or promoting its brand. So now moving on, we are saying that this act is somehow negative towards the business, because employers may not get a court interdict to stop a strike. Yeah, sometimes it's not easy to stop a strike as employers. There are a lot of procedures to be followed. So the moment the employers are still trying by all means to engage on issues that should be followed whenever they want to stop strike, that on its own is going to be time consuming, because now it will need paperwork. Because sometimes, if you have seen, if there's a strike, especially at business levels, it does take time before that strike stops. That is why previously I said that if there's something like that, the strike prolongs, then there shall be what? A lockout. Moving on, we are saying that employers may have to disclose information about workplace issues to union representatives. That could be the core of their competitive advantage. So remember, some of the information in the business is a confidential information. So now, as a business, if you have to disclose such information to the union's representative, they might take the information to your competitor, and now that competitor now be able now to beat you in terms of the market. Remember, whenever we refer to the competitor, we refer to what? The business that sells the commodity same as yours. So now to beat the competition, remember, as a business or individual businesses have to come up with certain quality, and also they have to come up with ways on how they serve their customers and the likes. So now moving on, we are saying that employers may not dismiss employees at will, as procedures have to be followed. Sometimes, yes, you may find that the culprit who started the strike, you see that, okay, this one is the one who started the strike. But now you can't just fire that person because the person started the strike. There are some procedures to be followed. Even though now, when as a person you see that I can't allow this person to work for my business anymore, you can't fire that person. We have to follow what? We have to follow the guidelines that are actually been portrayed in this Labor Relations Act. So now it may take time. It may take time. You may find that now it may take Boma 2 or 3 months before that person is actually fired. So imagine if you are working with someone whom you know that this person, instead of aiming to make sure that my business becomes a success, now they are trying by all means to bring a business down. Then now you are forced to work with such individual. It's not easy. Okay, so moving on to another aspect, we are saying that many employees take advantage of the right to strike without acknowledging their responsibilities. Yeah, because now, if employees know that they have a right to strike, even when not necessary, they just strike because they know they have their rights. So now, this act somehow is not put there to give these employees to strike. Instead of giving these employees to strike, at least it can at least give the guidelines to say, okay, guys, if you are not happy with the environment at which you are working in, make sure that you do what you follow this and that. Instead of saying strike, this one of strike is very very bad. Remember what recently happened in Soweto. Most of the businesses got affected, and in particular malls. So now the government didn't even plan or budget for the replacement of damaged property. But now the government now was forced to pump out money to fix such damaged properties, rebuilding of malls, rebuilding of other shops, and the likes. So now moving on to another aspect, you are saying that many employees and employers do not understand or respect the Labor Relations Act, of which this is true. I've seen the volume of people who are going to the Department of Labor because of unfair dismissal. Some of the employers, yes, they know of the act, but they are somehow negligent. They don't even read what the act possesses. They don't, totally they don't. So now in a business, if you want to grow, you should make sure that you understand all of these acts. Because the moment you don't understand all of these acts, you end up performing whatsoever be regarded as the what as not complying with the act. So now this one is just that most of people who are in business, they haven't undertaken a research to understand the inside of different side of acts. So if your mother, your father, your uncle, whoever in your family is having a business, go out there, teach them about these acts, how these acts are working. Because you see some of the businesses, they end up shutting down because of failure to comply with this Labor Relations Act. Because now, if employees take the business to CCMA because of the failure of the business to deal with and dispute, at the end of the day, you find that such businesses end up shutting down or being insolvent. Okay, so moving on to another aspect, we are saying that strike actions always result in loss of production for which employers may not claim. Eish, this one is very painful. I said it earlier that some of the strikes result in the damage of property. And once the property has been vandalized, the business now has to take from its profits to replace such damaged property instead of channeling such amount towards what? Towards the implementation of new products, or towards the opening of more branches, or towards a marketing so that the brand can be known globally. Okay, so now moving on to another aspect, we are saying that some trade unions may not promote the mandate of their members, but embark on industrial action, which is harmful to labor relations between employers and employees. So here, when we talk of industrial action, we refer to issues such as strikes, go slow, and the likes. So in some businesses, if the employees are not happy with the way things are being done in that particular business, instead of striking, you may find that they go slow. When they go slow, they don't stop producing goods and services, but the rate at which goods and services are being produced is now very, very slow. So now remember this act. We said that this act encourages what? Encourages trade unions. So some of these trade unions, instead of performing their mandate, they do what? They do the opposite. And once they do the opposite, then it's going to affect the relationship between the employer and the employee. Because now the trade unions may find that now their approach is totally bad. Because they'll be trying by all means to fight for the rights of the employees or workers who have actually registered in that particular trade union. So now, moving on, we are saying that some businesses may feel that the LRA gives employees too much power as it creates lengthy procedures, e.g., consulting with workplace forums. Remember workplace forums? I said these are workplace committees. And these workplace committees, they involve workers and the employers. So now, if there is any dispute that needs immediate solution, you find that instead of employers coming up with immediate solution, now they have to consult the act. What is the act saying concerning this issue? So now that one on its own, it takes time. Meaning that issue that took place today, we may find that now it will be resolved after a month or after 2 months and the likes. So now moving on, we are going to discuss the discriminatory actions according to the LRA. So now, this is what the Act says no to it. What the Act says no to it. So now this Act says no to unfair or illegal dismissal of employees. Remember, for a business to fire someone, they shouldn't just fire someone without following the procedures on how to dismiss someone at the workplace. There should be first warning, there should be second warning, there should be third warning. Then at the end of the day now, that particular employee should be dismissed or should be fired. It also says that no to preventing employees from joining trade unions. As an employer, you don't have a right to prevent employees from joining any organization that will fight for their rights. You don't have to say no. You give them that platform because the Act says that each and every employee has to join a trade union, of which, if there's anything taking place in a business, then the trade union will fight on their behalf. Also, if they join this trade union, you may find that it will minimize industrial actions such as strikes, go slows, and the likes. Then at the end of the day, you find that that dispute that was taking place in your business, or that indifferences that was taking place in your business, now is smartly resolved. Okay, moving on to another aspect. This act says no to reducing the establishment of workplace forums. Remember, we said workplace forums here, we refer to workplace committees. So now this act says that as an employer, don't prevent your employees from forming what? From forming the forums. What you must do, you must make sure that you also become part of those forums, and that forums also should be in writing. They shouldn't just be a verbal forum, but it should be in writing and should be approved by what? By the employer or the management of that particular business. Okay, moving on. This act says no to forcing employees to give trade union membership. It says no to forcing employees to give up trade union membership. So now, as an employer, if you find out that one of your employees have joined the trade union, you don't have the right to stop them. You say, okay, if when you are a member of this trade union, I no longer want you in my business. You don't have that right. If you do that, then your business will negatively be affected. And if your business is negatively be affected, it means that also the success is going to be affected. Remember, whenever we talk of the success, we refer to what? We refer to the attainment or collection of profit. Okay, so now moving on, we are saying that this act says no to not allowing employees to take part in legal strikes, which is employees' rights. Remember, a strike can be legal if now the employees, before they embark in such strike, they must go to the police to get that what? To get that that go ahead to strike. And that go ahead should be what? In a written format. They shouldn't just strike without the consent of the police. Okay, so now moving on, we are saying that this act says no to cancellation of employees' contracts by a new employer when a business is sold. This one is not easy at all. So meaning that if you sell your business, you must also sell your employees, unless otherwise. You can't just terminate or cancel their contracts and say, okay, guys, now I'm selling the business, I'm canceling your contract. No, if you are canceling the contract, you should make sure that you do what? You arrange a meeting with them and then you compensate them. No, don't just cancel their contracts, because the moment you cancel their contract without any form of compensation, they can take you to CCMA. Then from there, your business will be badly affected, or when as an individual, you'll be badly affected. Okay, so moving on, we are saying that this act says no to refusing to give workplace forum members. It says no to refusing to give workplace forum members which should be paid in timely and also attending meetings during working hours. So now, working hours, I spoke about it. No employee should attend any trade union meeting during working hours. And also this act says that during working hours is working hours, and the expectation is that employees should produce goods and services instead of sitting and then starting to have meetings. At the end of the day, now they're expecting to be compensated for that particular day when they failed to be productive. Okay, so also this act says no to refusing a leave to trade union representatives to attend trade union activities. So now, leave, remember this leave, we say off duty. This leave, it should be off duty. So now, people who are, or employees who are members of trade unions, they shouldn't just attend the trade unions without the consent of the employer. The employer, if these workers or employees are part of the trade unions and they want to perform their activities somewhere, now they should be given leave, and such leave should be paid. And this one is not forceful. It should be the communication between the employer and the employee. Remember, the major aim of this act is to promote the harmonious relationship between the employer and the employee, so as to avoid the disagreement between the two parties. Okay, so now moving on, we are saying that this act says no to breaching of collective agreements, resolution mechanisms by either employer or employee. So now, if there's any disagreement, as I've said earlier, the employer has to follow the guidelines given inside LRA. They shouldn't use their own power to solve problems, but they should be using what? The given guidelines by the Labor Relations Act. Okay, right. So now, moving on, we are going to evaluate or discuss ways in which businesses can comply with the LRA. So now, meaning here, we are going to check aspects that the Act says yes to them. This is what the Act says yes. So now we are saying that the Act says yes, if the employer may be forced to enter into dispute resolution process. Some of the employers, whenever there is any disagreement between them and their employees, they always run away. So now the Act forces them that if there is any disagreement or if there is any dispute, make sure that you solve those disputes. Because if you fail to follow to solve the dispute, then hard measures will be taken on such employers. So I think this one is the right thing, because what I have disclosed recently, most of employers, whenever there is any dispute taking place, instead of solving such dispute, they run away. So now, once they run away, this Act says, okay, if you run away, I'll deal with you. So now, at the end of the day, you find such employers, their businesses are affected. And if their businesses are affected, they end up not attaining whatsoever profit that they were expecting to attain. Okay, moving on. We are saying that this Act says no says yes when businesses are fined if they fail to comply with the agreements reached during the dispute resolution process. Remember, sometimes you may find that there's a dispute taking place between the employer and the employee. And then whenever there's a meeting of the resolution, normally the minutes are taken. And when minutes are taken, you find that the next day, now the employer is doing the opposite. So once the employer is doing the opposite, then that one on its own will be very bad to the what? Business operation. Okay, so now let's move on. We are saying that businesses that fail to comply with this Act may risk financial costs, such as legal, CCMA fees, and fines. So now this Act value is binding. It's binding. Any business that fail to follow whatsoever guidelines that are given in this Act, then they will be forced to pump out money, because now they will be charged. They will be charged in terms of legal basis, also in terms of money that should be paid to CCMA because of failure to comply with the guidelines of which they knew very well that they're supposed to comply. So now moving on to another aspect, we are going to discuss ways in which businesses can comply with LRA. So now if we check this 12 and 13 ways is more or less the same. So now also employees should not be unfairly or legally dismissed. We discussed it. So now let's check the recommendation or the recommendation of the rights on LRA pertaining to employers. So now employers, they have a right to form organizations. Employers also, they have a right to form a bargaining council for collective bargaining purposes. Remember, collective bargaining, I said that this is a negotiation between employers association and trade unions on matters such as wages, salaries, working conditions, and the likes. So now employers also, they have the right to lock out employees who engage in an unprotected or illegal strike. So remember, a strike can only be legal if the police give a go ahead to strike. But also if the police give a go ahead to strike, it should be in a written format. We are saying that employers have a right to dismiss employees who are engaged in an unprotected strike or misconduct, such as intimidation, violence during a strike action. But remember, when they dismiss, they shouldn't just dismiss, they should follow some guidelines according to Labor Relations Act. Employers, they have a right not to pay an employee who has taken part in an unprotected or protected strike for services or work they did not do during the strike. Yes, no work, no pay. So no production of goods and services, no payment. Because even in a contract, it is specified that if you don't render any form of a service, you are not going to be paid for such. So also inside the act, it says that if you are engaged in a strike, and this strike that you are engaged in, and when you are not producing goods and services, you shouldn't get paid, especially if the strike is not legal. But even though it's legal, somehow, but that particular day, they are going to check the issues that caused that strike. If the issues that caused the strike are issues that are understandable, then you will be getting paid for that particular day. But if the issues are not understandable, it means that day just lost the day. You're not going to be compensated for that particular day because you failed to produce goods and services. So now you'll be getting paid for what? Let's check the rights of the employees concerning this LRA. Okay, so now employees may join a trade union of their choice. As the employer, you don't have a right to prevent anyone from joining the trade union of their choice. And you say, no, you can only join this particular trade union, not this one, because this one, it has what? It has more power than this one. No, totally no. I won't call trade unions by the names, but there are different set of trade unions of which each and every employee has a right to choose the trade union of their choice. As an employer, you shouldn't choose for them. Okay, so now remember trade union, I said these are organizations formed so as to fight for the rights of workers. So now, when as an employer, you don't have any say concerning which trade union should employees join. So now moving on, employees have a right to embark on legal strikes as a remedy for grievances. Yes, they have a right to embark on legal strike, so as to raise their grievances, so as to raise whatsoever worries them, whatsoever is not conducive in that particular business. Remember, legally here, the police should have a say on it, and it should be in in paper, should be in a written format. So now, if the reasons that employees are giving, the understandable reasons, then they do what? They have a right to engage in a strike or a go slow whenever they are not happy with the issues taking place in that particular business. Okay, right. So now moving on to another aspect, you're saying that employees have a right to refer unresolved workplace disputes to the CCMA. Remember, employees can only go to CCMA if the dispute failed to be resolved at the workplace level. There are a lot of reasons why some of the disputes can fail to be resolved at the workplace level. So now, if the dispute failed to be resolved at the workplace level, then that particular employee has a right to report or take that matter further to CCMA. When I ask the employer, you don't have any right to fight such employee, or you say, I'm firing you because now you took me to CCMA. We have seen even when you're watching TV, most of the employers, they're actually being exposed that they fail to resolve issues that are taking place in their businesses. Hence, then their business at the end of the day end up shutting down. And now, surely, if the business shuts down, you're affected as the owner of that particular business, because your major aim of establishing such business was to make profit. Okay, right. So now moving on, we're saying that employees have a right to refer unresolved CCMA disputes to the labor court on appeal. So sometimes you may find that, yes, employees, they took their matters to CCMA. So, but now also CCMA in the same manner fails to resolve the matter. So now if the CCMA fails to resolve the matter, these employees also, they have a right to take the matter onto the next step. So which is labor court on appeal. So that's where now also the matter will be resolved. Employees they do have a right to request trade union representatives to assist or represent employees in their grievances or disciplinary hearing. So sometimes you may find that an employee is having a disciplinary hearing in a business. So now they have a right to bring someone who is not even part of that particular business to come in that hearing, as long as that particular person is a member of a trade union. So now they are welcome to come and join such hearing, so as to check how they can reach a solution. Okay, so now also employees have a right to what? Trade union representatives that may take a reasonable time of work with pay to attend to trade union duties. So now, remember, if a trade union representative, you shouldn't just leave your workplace so as to attend the disciplinary hearing. You should give a notice. And then if you give a notice or you communicate with your employer, then your employer is not forced, but the employer will sit down and evaluate the reasons that are causing or making you to attend such hearing, while you leave your what your production of goods and services. I think at this juncture we have come to the end of the lesson. So in the next lesson we are going to discuss Employment Equity Act. So now surely you have enjoyed the lesson. Let's meet in the next lesson. Thank you very much. May God bless you.